Today, in current events from a Christian perspective, Minecraft, a beloved video game which kids as young as 3 years old play, is now apparently gay. Meanwhile, an R&B star goes based on trans ideology, then apologizes, then unapologizes. What can we learn from this saga? In Disney news, again, they have hired a man who dresses like a woman to show off girls' clothes. No, that's not a joke. I'm sure this is going to go really well. And finally, we go to South Africa, where a crowd of 100,000 or so people are doing a death chant because of racism. All this and more today. I'm Matt Odegaard, and this is Church Public. Welcome back to Church Public. I'm Matt Odegaard, your host, as always, and really appreciate you stopping by. Your time is valuable, and I want to honor that. I want to look at current events from a Christian perspective so that you can know how to live out your faith in this wild and crazy world that we live in. So if you haven't already, hit the like, subscribe, share, do all the things, hit all the notifications. You can get this audio podcast on places like Spotify and Apple and Google and Amazon and a bunch of other different places. If you want to see the video, if you're just listening on audio, I love you. If you want to see the video, we'll be looking at some video clips today, and you may want to see that. You can go to churchpublic.com. There's a link for the video clip there. You can go to YouTube, probably, and some other places. So go ahead and check that out whenever you're ready, and we will just talk about some news so that we can understand what it means to live out your faith in all of these different places. I like to use current events to do this because I think it helps us put real-world situations into Christian worldview. And how do we understand how to live out our faith in these wild and wacky times? And also sometimes just public service announcements, sometimes just seeing, hey, what in the world is going on around us? So, oh man, this first story, it kind of makes me sad. My kids have been into this particular game for a bunch of years at this point, but this is about Minecraft. We're talking about Minecraft. They posted the other day that Minecraft is proud to support and uplift the LGBTQIA plus communities. Join us and show your pride with over 40 plus free character creator items available now. So in other words, if you aren't aware, what you can do is get these skins of the person that you are in the game, the avatar, if you will, and use that. So of course now Pride avatars and things like that. Minecraft Pride is what we're looking at here. It's just all of the different characters in Pride outfits. Again, this is just kind of a reminder to parents, know what your kids are doing. Have conversations about the video games that they're playing. Have conversations, like, don't just send them up and say, okay, do whatever you want. It's a hard thing. Believe me, I've had my own struggles in my own house with this. I'm not immune to it by any means, but that's why I want us to understand this, parents and kids. If you're listening, just know what is going on in the games that you're playing, and that the game creators, the game owners, do have agendas, and they want to put those agendas on you. They want you to act like they want you to act. You need to understand that is how this whole thing works. Meanwhile, in Disneyland, or Disney news, as it were, apparently there is a part of this that's called Disney Style, and Disney Style partnered with this guy. He is a gender fluid influencer, and this gender fluid influencer has been tasked with marketing girls' clothing, and says things like, quote, I am Minnie and Minnie is me, or something like that. This is the gender influencer. I'm sorry, this is the Disney influencer. Maybe that was a Freudian slip. All right. It's sorry, losing it here. This is the post. The Walt Disney Corporation and TikTok influencer Sean Altman, biological male who identifies as gender fluid, have joined forces to market girls' attire on social media, showing Disney solidarity, with the LGBTQ plus community. This is a picture here of this person dressed as Minnie. I don't know. I have this video. We'll start this video. I don't know if I can make it all the way through, but we'll watch a little bit of it and then talk about it.
Let's get dressed. Today we're looking at the most iconic friend group, Disney's Mickey and Friends. And the character most like me is Minnie Mouse. And I have the most perfect dress to start the look. It even has little Mickeys on it, and I love how bold of a red it is. It's just like Minnie. I'm thinking of layering a fun collar.
Okay, that's all I can do. It goes on and on. He dresses like Minnie and then says, look, I am Minnie. And I mean, this is the thing, right? Disney has an agenda. We've gone over this and over this and over this. If you don't believe me already. And they want your kids to understand that. So this is what looks like a full-grown male person or, something who is dressing as Minnie to show children and girls how to dress like Minnie. If we don't see the problem with that, I don't know what to do. So we turn to a scientific expert, or at least so I'm told. This was another clip that I just think is kind of related as we get into this kind of thoughts and issues. This is Neil deGrasse Tyson, who uses science in a lot of different things. Now, full disclosure, he and I disagree on almost everything that I've heard him say, but apparently well respected in the scientific community. So he has some thoughts about, I guess, scientifically, what it means to identify as the gender you weren't born with. So let's hear his thoughts, and then maybe we'll give some Christian worldview based on that.
My point is, apparently, the XXXY chromosomes are insufficient because when we wake up in the morning, we exaggerate whatever feature we want to portray the gender of our choice. Either the one you're assigned, the one you choose to be, whatever it is. And so now, so now just to tie a bow on this, I say to you, somewhere I think I read that the United States was a land where we have the pursuit of happiness.
Yes.
Suppose no matter my chromosomes, today I feel 80% female, 20% male. I'm gonna put on makeup. I'm gonna do that. Tomorrow I might feel 80% male. I'll remove the makeup and I'll wear a muscle shirt. Why do you care?
Yeah.
What business is it of yours to require that I fulfill your inability to think of gender on a spectrum?
Oh, so apparently that's science, right? That's what we're talking about. This is science. He's a scientist. So the science is if you feel 80% of a different gender, then science tells you that you are. Now, to those who do science or understand that science is hypothesis testing and then recalibration, that's not actually how science works in the way that he's describing it. So that's a thing. Also, just the idea that science is knowledge from the Latin, right? Science is just to know something. So I hate to drop this card, but feeling is not knowing. Hopefully we understand that. This is not even Christian worldview. This is actual science, right? Feeling is not knowing. Feeling is something that is subjective based on you, the subject, perceiving what is happening in the world. Shouldn't have to explain this. Knowing is objective, to see what is real in the world and then deal with that accordingly. Object. The object of something is outside of you. The subject is you, right? Again, this is both science. This is rational thinking. This is English, using words that actually mean things. Again, so according to him, the scientist, feeling equals science, or 80% of feeling equals science. Maybe you could say 51% of feeling equals science. I don't know. I don't know how far this goes. Is a majority of your feeling then that's science? I don't understand how any of this works because to me, it's not entirely science. Also, I must take issue with the pursuit of happiness as described in the Declaration of Independence. While that is written in the Declaration of Independence, it doesn't mean you can do whatever you want. The pursuit of happiness doesn't mean you can be happy however you want to be happy, whenever you want to be happy, with whatever you want to be happy. That's just not how any of society works or has ever for all of time. There have always been rules. There always will be rules that govern behavior because how you act matters to society. That's the bottom line. When you say, why do I care? I care because society needs order. A society without any order is chaos and anarchy, and that's clearly bad. And this is clearly a disordered lifestyle. If you are actually physically a man and you feel like a woman, so you do things like a woman, that's not ordered. Hopefully we can understand that, right? It's not real and it doesn't match reality. And you're asking me then to go one step beyond and agree with it, and not even just agree with it, to celebrate it, to include it in every part of my life. And I just have to say no to that, which is really weird, arguing with a scientist about reality. I would hope that a scientist has a bigger grasp on reality, but maybe that is a bigger statement on what we qualify as science these days. But there you go. I thought that was an interesting clip going around, and I think it's important from a Christian worldview to understand that reality is not based on your feeling. Reality is based on the objective interpretation of the world. Now, we can get into metaphysics, which is a topic that I really love to talk about from an Aristotelian perspective, right? Metaphysics is something that is beyond physics. And from a biblical perspective, we would say it's spirituality, because we are not just body, we are not just material. And that is, it's weird that a materialist like Tyson would argue such an immaterial, a spiritual, a metaphysical argument that your feelings then create reality, because that's not material, that's more than material, right? Now, I believe that there is spirituality. I believe that there is a soul, but I believe that God has created us cohesively, all in one piece. So our soul, our body are connected. We cannot separate them. And these are biblical worldview values, right? This is just practical theology, that you realize you are a soul and a body. You're connected. You cannot separate those out and say, well, my soul is one thing and my body is another thing, therefore I'm going to change my body to match my soul. It's actually the opposite in Christian worldview, where Jesus says, deny yourself, pick up your cross, be born again, right? You die to your old self. You are raised to life through the power of Christ and the Holy Spirit into new life and adopted as sonship into the Father's kingdom. So this is a life where you do not change your outward physical to match your inward. You change your inward. And in fact, you don't do anything because you don't have the power to change anything in you. God changes your inward soul to become matching to who you are actually created to be. That's the good news of the gospel. And again, if you want more information on that, don't believe me. Read through Romans or Ephesians or the gospel of Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John. Any of them are great. Just read through those in the scripture with a view to how does God change you from the inside out? What has he done for you? What has he prepared in advance for you? And then maybe we'll understand this a little bit better. All right, so let's move on to a R&B star, Neo, who, in my opinion, goes based on trans ideology, but then kind of apologizes, but then unapologizes. And so there's this whole thing. It was blowing up all over the interwebs. There's a bunch of different clips. I'm going to put all the clips together. We're going to talk about this and see the timeline, kind of what happened and what is going on here. And I think this is an important example of what we can learn from a Christian worldview perspective. There are some conservative things going on that he's doing, maybe accidentally, maybe on purpose. There's some liberal things that he's doing, again, probably accidental because that's just how culture is. And then there's the culture that's saying you have to be left of this, you have to be progressive on this. And all of this smashes together in this one incident. And that's why I think this is a great example to look through and say, hey, what's going on from a worldview perspective? So first thing we'll do is look at the original clip that kind of got him in trouble. Let's take a look.
Parents have almost forgotten what the role of a parent is.
Amen.
It's like, okay,
Lost control.
If your little boy comes to you and says, Daddy, I want to be a girl, and you just let him rock with that, you just let,
Right.
He's 5.
Right. And where did he get that
If
from?
you let this 5-year-old boy decide to eat candy all day, he's going to do that.
Exactly.
Like, when did it become a good idea to let a 5-year-old, let a 6-year-old, let a 12-year-old make a life-changing decision for themselves?
Right.
When did that happen?
Right.
Like, I don't understand that. I don't get that.
And to medicate these young kids that are 5, 6, growing up and knowing that it affects their brain, it affects their organs, it makes them sick, but they're not allowed to do drugs, they're not allowed to do alcohol.
Right.
We can medicate them
He
up.
can't drive a car yet, but he can decide his sex.
Oh, such great points there. I kind of agree pretty much with everything that was said there, right? Because, yeah, this is the weird world that we're living in where we won't let children do all kinds of things like drugs and driving and tattoos. And yet, as young children, the culture is saying, well, of course you can medically and surgically transition to be approximating another gender. Yeah, of course. Why doesn't that make sense? Because none of this makes sense. And he's like, I'm a dad and I don't want this. Right. It's great. I love the way he is approaching this topic. I think this is appropriate, and the way that a father and a conservative and a Christian, which I don't know enough about him. I really am not that familiar with who he is, but apparently very, very popular. So the things he's saying are correct. Those are correct. So for that, he was just destroyed on social media because this is now intolerant, right? You can't speak against this. And you can't say that boys are boys and girls are girls and men are men and women are women. And you can't say that. You can't say that on podcasts, even though I am too. You can't say it. You can't say it on the internet. You cannot say it on social media, which will be interesting. Anyway, I won't talk about that anymore. So you can't say these things anywhere. So this post was put out by Neo. And if you are just listening, I did some air quotes there because we'll see in a moment. Was it put out by Neo? But this post was put out on his social media channel. And this was the response there. So I'll read this for you if you're just listening. After much reflection, I'd like to express my deepest apologies to anyone that I may have hurt with my comments on parenting and gender identity. I've always been an advocate for love and inclusivity in the LGBTQI community, so I understand how my comments could have been interpreted as insensitive and offensive. Gender identity is nuanced, and I can honestly admit that I plan to better educate myself on the topic so I can approach future conversations with more empathy. At the end of the day, I lead with love and support everyone's freedom and expression and pursuit of happiness. By the way, as an aside, and for those, maybe I just look at too many of these, but this sounds exactly, I mean, like, I probably should have looked and found some word for word comparisons, but there are a lot of apologies that people give for comments like this. And this one sounds exactly the same as a bunch of the ones that I've seen. So I find myself wondering, like, is ChatGPT writing these things, or is there just a boilerplate template that they all have that they just, hit click and copy and change a word or two and like send it out? Because that's what it reads like to me. It reads like exactly the same language as every other quote unquote apology that I've heard on this topic. But again, maybe I'm reading too much into it. That's just what I see out of it. So I'm not even going to take this apology apart, because the next thing that happens is super interesting. The next thing that happens is he goes, hey, wait, I didn't write this apology. My publicist wrote this apology, and I don't agree with this apology, because there was some time that occurred here. He went on that first podcast, said those things. He was just torn apart on the socials, on the interwebs. Everyone was really frustrated with him. Then the apology comes out, and then the conservatives that said, well, no, what he said first was correct, we're like, oh, I can't believe he bowed to the mob. And then he comes out with this response to the response. I know we're kind of going down a rabbit hole here, but I think it's interesting, because this illustrates how the culture says you can't argue about certain things, like a man is a man, a boy is a boy. You can't say them out loud in a public space where they crash down on him. Then you can apologize, but on the left, you can never apologize enough. That's the first thing we've learned, if you've learned anything in listening to the topics that we've talked about. You cannot apologize enough. They will always say, nope, you need to apologize more, because there's no forgiveness in this alphabet cult. There is no forgiveness. You cannot find forgiveness in this place. You need to understand that. So you can't apologize enough. And then we learn, hey, stick to what you believe. If you have beliefs, especially if they're founded in good things, if your beliefs are founded in good things like Judeo-Christian ideology, and I'm going to go a step further and say Christian ideology. If your worldview is based on Christianity, the foundation of Christ and Christ alone, you need to stick to those ideals, even when the culture says, hey, no, you're not allowed to say those things. You need to say the true things and stick to the true things, and know that the world is not going to love that, and they're going to trash you for it. So he comes out and then has a response to the response. I know we're kind of bouncing around like a tennis ball here, but listen to this one, because this is a good one.
First and foremost, I do not apologize for having an opinion on this matter. I am a 43-year-old heterosexual man raising 5 boys and 2 girls, okay? That's my reality. Now, if my opinion offended somebody, yeah, sure, I apologize for you being offended, because that wasn't my intention. My intention is never to offend anybody. However, I'm entitled to feel how I feel. I'm absolutely entitled to feel how I feel, the same way you are entitled to feel how you feel. I ain't asked nobody to follow me. I ain't asked nobody to agree with me. I was asked a question, and I answered the damn question, okay? I have no beef with the LGBTQIA plus community whatsoever. I ain't got no beef with y'all. Do whatever the hell it is you want to do. Do what you want to do with your kids. However, somebody asked my opinion on this matter, and this is how I feel. I will never be okay with allowing a child to make a decision that detrimental to their life. I will never be okay with that. I don't care. I definitely plan to educate myself a little bit more on this matter. However, I doubt that there's any book, anywhere or any opinion that somebody's going to tell me that's going to make me okay with letting a child make a decision like that. That's just period, point blank, and that's how I feel. If I get canceled for this, then you know what? Maybe this is a world where they don't need a Neo no more, all right? And I got no problem with that. I'm a hustler, all right? I'll figure it out. I got kids to raise, and I'm going to do that regardless. So with that being said, y'all have a good day.
I love it. I love it. I love the fire. I love the passion that he's saying, listen, I'm a dad, and I understand that you have to be a dad. Like, I love that. We don't hear enough of that. I mean, that's one of the things that this culture is really, really hungering for, I believe. Like, they want dads who will say, no, I'm going to be a dad and I'm going to do the right thing, even when you say no. And even if I get canceled and even if I lose everything, he goes, I'm a hustler. I'm going to get back to it and I'm going to find a way, because that's what we dads do. That's what we do in the face of adversity, in the face of challenges. You get back up. You don't just sit around. You go, hey, what are we going to do? How are we going to get better? Let's go. I absolutely love that. Now, not to split hairs, but I have to point to one thing. And the thing that I'm going to point to, this is going to feel like splitting hairs maybe. It's going to feel like nitpicking a little bit maybe to you. But I think this is important. And the reason this is important is one of the things that he says is actually part of the reason that we're in the place that we're in. And I'm going to explain that. I'm going to explain that because he says, you can do whatever you want with your kids. You can live however you want. And this goes back to Tyson that we heard earlier. He's like, why do you care what someone else is doing? And the reality is society. The reality is we have to live together. We have to live into a society. And there are societal norms, societal rules that govern what we do. And we have to understand that. And to some of you out there, I've had this conversation with some of you where you say, but you can't legislate my morality. You can't impose your thoughts, your will upon me. And the reality is someone has to. And you don't have to believe me. You don't have to agree with me. That's fine. But you have to agree on something. To have a society that has order and not anarchy and chaos, you have to agree on something. What is that going to be? My proposal, as always, is going to be that you base your morality, your reality, your societal norms on Christ. If you don't base your societal norms, your reality, your morality, your faith on Christ, what are you going to base it on? Are you going to base it on the president's morality? Are you going to base it on Gavin Newsom's morality, the governor of California? Whose morality are you going to choose? Are you going to choose Marx? Are you going to choose Engels? Are you going to choose Stalin? Are you going to choose who are you going to choose? Are you going to choose Nietzsche? Are you going to choose Freud? Are you going to choose? I mean, I could go on and on and on and name all these people who have ideas about morality, but you have to choose because it's not neutral. In a vacuum, morality is going to go to the lowest common denominator. That is what we've seen throughout history, which is why it's really important to understand what happens in history and how history impacts the way we are today. We are the product, we are the sum total of everyone that has gone before us, because the rules, the morality, the society, the civilization has added up to this moment that we're in. You can pretend that you're inventing everything on your own. You can pretend like John Lennon, if everything, imagine there was no people, imagine there was no heaven, imagine there was no religion, imagine there was no government. You can imagine all those things and pretend that without all those things, you'll have peace. But the reality is, as history shows over and over and over again, that's not what really happens. When you don't have good government, when you don't have good rulers, when you don't have good morality, what happens instead is anarchy, chaos, and persecution across the board. It happens every single time. I could give you hundreds of examples just off the top of my head. So, Neo says, you do whatever you want with your kids. You live how you want with your kids, and that's fine. I don't care. I'm going to say on the other side, I do care. I do care what you do with your kids because it does matter to me. It impacts me and my family because it impacts society, because it impacts the community, it impacts what's going on. He has this one more clip that was actually from the first podcast that he did, but he expounds on that idea a little bit more, and I think it's a good enough clip to go back to and listen to. So listen to this for a second, and then we'll talk about it.
The issue with the LBGT, I have no problem with with nobody. Okay,
right.
Love who you love, do what you do.
Exactly.
I just personally come from an era where a man was a man and a woman was a woman, and it wasn't but two genders, and that's just how I rocked.
Me
now,
too.
You could identify as a goldfish if you feel like.
Right.
I don't care. That ain't my business. It becomes my business when you try to make me play the game with you. I'm not finna call you a goldfish, but you want to be a goldfish, you go be a goldfish. It's all
Amen.
So I mean, okay, so it's funny. It's funny he goes, you can identify as a goldfish. I mean, okay, that's funny. It's a funny joke. He was kind of making a joke, but he was making light of an issue that's a really big issue, but we need to figure out, hey, what are we going to do with this? And my question, and I'm going to push on this a little bit, is he right? Can you identify as a goldfish, and is that okay? And is it okay to just say, yeah, you be you, live your truth, be a goldfish? I'm going to push back on that and say, no, it's not okay to say you can be whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. You can invent whatever truth you want. You can identify as a goldfish, a turtle, an eagle, do whatever you want because it doesn't matter to me. I think it does. It may sound like a good argument. And this is the problem that even some conservatives fall into. I see this trap all the time and they just topple headlong into it because they think, oh, it's more loving, it's more caring. I see Christians fall into this problem all the time. Love your neighbor means let you do whatever you want to do and live your truth and I can't judge you. That all of that is just wrong. That's a wrong worldview because then it gets into this place where we are right now where it says, well, I can then become a woman. I can just say, declare to the universe, I am this other thing. I am a goldfish, to use his analogy. I can just declare that, and that makes it true. But that's not how truth works. That's not how reality works. And that's not in any way a conservative value. Just to go back again, conservative means you are conserving. This mindset is exactly what led us to where we are. This is not a conservative, or especially this is not a Christian perspective. If you want to be a goldfish is a secular, liberal, or even libertarian perspective. It's the exact same thing as live your truth. And that becomes a problem when people actually do that, which is what we're seeing now. People, adults, and especially, as he's talking about, children are now being pushed through this pipeline to say, well, yeah, you can be whatever you want. Literally, physically, biologically be whatever you want. Real biology, real physicality, reality, chromosomes, DNA, none of that really matters. You can be whatever you want. We talk here about saying what you mean and meaning what you say. It's really important. In Bible terms, it's let your yes be yes, let your no be no out of Matthew 5. The problem here is the idea of live your truth is not honest. You live your truth, I live my truth, and everybody's okay. If there's a your truth, if there's a my truth, then there is no the truth. But believers, you and me, if you're a believer, you know there is a truth, and we know what that truth is. Jesus is the truth. In fact, we're charged with proclaiming the truth. Matthew 28, go and make disciples. We'll look at that more in a moment. What I really appreciate from Neo is this push back to culture, and we get this from him. He's pushing back culture and saying, no, you can't tell me that my kids can be something else. You can't tell me that a man is not a man or a woman is not a woman. I know what reality is. And I love that. I love that he's taken that step. And I love that he's illustrated that step. And I love that even though the publicist, wrote something else, that he pushed back and said, no, I don't apologize for this because truth is truth. But then he soft pedals it and takes a step back and says, but you can live your truth. I know what my truth is, but you can live your truth. And it falls into the same trap that we see over and over again. And this is what we need to understand from a Christian worldview. This is not avoiding the cliff. This is just going towards the cliff more slowly. He's just taking a step back and saying, well, you can still live your truth, but I'm going to live my truth. And maybe there's a the truth, but you can be a goldfish, which essentially is saying, well, then there's not a truth. If you can be a goldfish, if being a goldfish is real for a human, then there is no the truth. Do we understand that? I know I'm sticking on this point, but this is a really important point. We need to understand from a Christian worldview that we view the world differently. There is a truth. Jesus is the truth. He is the only way. Yes, we should absolutely protect the kids. 100% agree with him on that. And I appreciate him saying that, but we need to do much more than that. And that's the reality. And that's the thing that we've got to get through. All right. Let's go across the pond to South Africa. I saw this come up and I have some thoughts about it. This is probably going to be controversial again, and apparently that's the place that I live. But I think this is important enough to think about, to talk about, and to realize from a Christian worldview, and there's a good Christian worldview perspective to look at this. So in South Africa, there's a controversy over a crowd of around 100,000 people chanting death to white farmers. So they're having this chant. Around 100,000 people are chanting death to white farmers, and they're making machine gun sounds. Is this racism? It's a good question. Video of South African politician Julius Malema is leading a stadium of about 100,000 people in a chant where they sing a song. The lyrics are shoot. There's some other lyrics, but the English lyrics are shoot to kill the boer, kill the farmer, a reference to white Afrikaner population of South Africa. Boer is a word for the descendants of Dutch people who are in South Africa. Again, so Boer and Afrikaners are kind of the same word, kind of synonyms there. He's saying kill the Boer, kill the white farmer. Now, apparently this is an old anti-apartheid chant from 80s and 90s. And of course, apartheid is bad. We can say that. Slavery is bad. Racism is bad. All of those things are bad. However, I'd like to add on to that, chanting for the death of a certain people based on their skin color is also bad. That's just bad. We shouldn't be doing that. So let's look at this video and then we'll look at this in a little more detail. Here is the first video.
Kichi, kichi, kichima, Simran Konto, Alliance, shoot to kill, Yamaza, kill the poor, the farmer, kill the poor, the farmer, brr, pa, pa, brr, pa, pa, attention.
So if you're just listening and not seeing, it's an enormous stadium full of people and they're chanting, as you just heard, kill the Boer, kill the white farmer, making machine gun sounds. And this is happening. And the news is saying, well, it's just a song, don't worry about it. That's what the news across the world is saying. So reading from the Blaze's Aaron McIntyre, he said, quote, in any other circumstance, the horrific call to violence would have generated an international outcry, but Malema chose the right target. Instead of issuing an unconditional condemnation of this dangerous rhetoric, progressive media outlets like the New York Times ran cover for Malema and his Marxist-Leninist party, the Economic Freedom Fighters, the EFF, as they chanted their demand for racial violence. Here is just one of the New York Times articles that I found. This is a New York Times article. Headline is, Kill the Boer song fuels backlash in South Africa and U.S., which sounds bad, but listen to this byline. Quote, right-wing commentators claim an old anti-apartheid chant is a call to anti-white violence, but historians and left-wing politician who embraces it say it should not be taken literally, end quote. So the chant, which you just heard from this thing, was kill the white farmer, machine gun sounds. You heard that. It's just a song. It doesn't mean anything. It's just 100,000 people chanting kill the Boer. It doesn't mean anything. It's just a symbol. It shouldn't be taken literally, right? Okay. Let's go with that. Is that true? Let's examine this a little further. So the leader, Julius Malema, was asked, will you denounce this idea of killing white farmers? He said this.
You must never be scared to kill. A revolution demands that at some point there must be killing, because the killing is part of a revolutionary act.
So he was given the opportunity, asked specifically, hey, would you say, hey, it's just a song, we're not going to actually kill anybody? And he says, no, you actually should definitely kill people. Every revolution needs you to kill people, and this is a revolution and we need to kill people. I don't know how that could be clearer. That's what he's saying. You can examine this for yourself. Go down the rabbit hole and look at this. Here's just a chart that I pulled up here. I'll make it bigger for those that are watching on video. This is just some of the murders that have occurred in South Africa. Again, if you're just listening to this, here's just a couple of stats that I pulled up. The murder of white farmers in South Africa is a real phenomenon. Those who dare to notice it are often smeared as racist conspiracy theorists by progressive media. In the last week of July, just a few weeks ago, 9 farm attacks and 2 murders were committed. So just a couple weeks ago, 9 farm attacks, 2 murders were committed, according to South African civil rights organization AfriForum. After the direct call to violence by Malema and his political party, a number of residents were attacked, including 79-year-old Theo Becker, who was brutally beaten before having his throat cut. A few days later, farmer Dwayne Smith and his wife Ingrid were shot by gunmen in front of their 2 young children. Dwayne was killed. Ingrid is still recovering from her injuries in a hospital. In many other cases, nothing of value is taken from farm murders, indicating these are not just robberies gone bad, but targeted acts of violence. So this is what we're led to believe. We're led to believe that this song saying "kill the white farmer" it's just an old song. We just like to sing the song. It doesn't really mean anything. We're not going to actually do that. Except people are actually doing that. They're actually listening to the song and going and killing white farmers. because of this grievance that they have. Meanwhile, in America, we're told by the New York Times why white supremacists are chugging milk, because drinking milk is now white supremacist. Or here's another one from MSNBC. Pandemic fitness trends have gone extreme. White supremacists' latest scheme to valorize violence has gone digital. In other words, if you work out and are healthy, you are then a white supremacist. So we're led to believe that the song that literally says, kill the white farmer, that's just fine. That's a symbol. Don't listen to that. But drinking milk, working out are dangerous signals of racial hatred. And this song calling for genocide, it's just a little song. Don't listen to that. Don't take that too seriously. Even though apartheid ended in 1994, South Africa is currently 80% black. This must all be the white man's fault. So 100,000 people chanting kill the white farmer is obviously justified. We need to go from a Christian worldview on this. Hopefully you see through this. It's not about black and white. It's about hate and death. We're called as Christians to be different, to love deeper, to love our enemy, not to kill them, and not to even hate them. Red and yellow, black and white, we are all precious in his sight, and we need to act like we love other people. This makes me very sad. It makes me very sad from the perspective that all of these people are sitting there full of anger and hate and focusing that hate on a certain people group. We have to condemn hatred like this when we see it, even if the culture apparently applauds it. So here's a little Bible to contradict that. Jesus in Matthew 5 says, verse 21, you have heard it was said to those of old, you shall not murder, and whoever murders will be liable to judgment. But I say, everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. In other words, if you even have this hatred in your heart, if you have this anger towards your fellow human, you are just as guilty of murder, because you've done it in your heart. Shortly after this, he says, verse 43, you've heard it said, you should love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I, Jesus, say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven. In other words, to be a follower of Jesus, to be a Christian, to be a believer, you have to not do this hatred, do this ideology. You have to love even those who persecute you. Shortly after, Paul picks up on this idea and explains it to us. Galatians 3:28 talks about neither slave or free or Greek or Jew, male or female, we're one in Christ. But right before that, he says, even before the faith came, this is verse 23, we were held captive under the law, imprisoned under the coming faith, which would be revealed. So then the law was our guardian until Christ came, in order that we might be justified by faith. But now that faith has come, we're no longer under this guardian, this teacher, for in Christ you're all sons of God through faith. As many of you were baptized into Christ, you put your faith in Christ. Here it is. There is neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male or female. You're all one in Christ. In other words, regardless of skin color, we cannot condone this kind of thing. White hate, black hate, any kind of hate is anti-Christian. We must show love. We must be different. We must act differently. It makes me sad because this stadium is clearly full of hurting people. Perhaps they've gone through intense suffering. Perhaps they've gone through persecution. That's all possible. But here's the thing. Their solution is the same as Cain and Abel. It's the same as the very first murder. It's kill your enemy. Jesus gives us a different solution, and we need to understand that. Love your enemy. Our sinful hearts want justice now, through retribution, through vengeance. That's the song that we just heard. Jesus commands us not to give in to vengeance, but rather to disciple the nations, teaching them to observe all of his commandments and live in righteousness because he is with us. Matthew 28:18-20. While this South African story may seem a world away, these issues are closer than you think, because all of us, we all, like sheep, have gone astray. Each of us has turned to his own way. Isaiah 53:6. I hope you begin the process of this in your home, of discipling the nation, of growing in faith and avoiding these ideas of retribution and vengeance, and rather putting your hope and your faith and your trust in Jesus, who is greater and is, in fact, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. I hope you start in your home, go out to your community and beyond. For Church Public, I'm Ed Odegaard, and I hope that you will keep the faith.